Hello friends, welcome back to the shop. Today is Sunday, September 16th, and it is a glorious day here. The rain has finally stopped, the sun is shining, we've got temperatures that are going to get up to 80 today. My wife gets mad at me when I say it, but we're not going to have many more like this year. So I'm hoping to get out there and enjoy some of the beautiful weather this afternoon. I know it's also hurricane season, and there's a lot of you guys that may not be enjoying beautiful weather right now. I hope you're all safe and sound, and all of our thoughts and prayers go out to all you folks that might be battling some of those heavy rains that have come in over the past day or so. And we hope you're safe. So, a couple things today. Well, first off, let's deal with the pipe. So this is my Winslow, and absolutely beautiful pipe, and it is filled with some Old Joe Krantz, which I am quite enjoying this morning. And I'm smoking the Winslow today for two reasons, actually. I mean, one is I love the pipe and I really enjoy smoking it. The other is I was contacted by the Durham Duke, who actually sold me this pipe, and I don't know why he sold this because it's a wonderful pipe, but I'm really glad he did. And he commented on last week's video when I talked about the new Phil Rivera pipe that I had, and he said it looks like it's the same shape, and I responded to him, no, the Winslow is a bit more rounded, and but then I looked at them. And you know what? The Durham Duke has a really good eye, because these pipes are, I mean, the Phil Rivera is smaller, but boy, the shape is really almost dead on the same. And I don't, part of the reason I'm not very good with pipe shapes is that to really identify a pipe shape, there's all these rules about the proportions and things like that. The height of the bowl in proportion to the length of the shank and so on, and I don't know. I called this a billiard at first, but as I look at it, it's probably a bit too squat and a bit more rounded than a billiard would be. The same with this. I don't quite know what to call this. It's maybe an apple, and the truth is I don't care. I like the way they look, but I really wanted to point that out and show it in particular for the Durham Duke, that these really are like dead on, nearly identical in shape, just one smaller than the other. So maybe that's why it caught my eye, but both of these are just absolutely fantastic smokers. And Phil, I hope you don't mind me putting you in the same company as Paul Winslow, but I would personally consider that to be a great compliment. So I hope you feel the same. So the Old Joe Krantz is smoking very nicely this morning. It's a funny blend in that it really does need to, it really does need to mature and meld properly. And once it does, and it only takes a few weeks, but boy, once it does, it's just wonderful. Smooth, sweet, burley, Virginia. I really like Old Joe Krantz. So, on to the business of the day. I am happy to say that this is going to be my last filter video. But it is a video that I have to do for two reasons. I need to, first off, report on the Meerschaum filter, which I used twice last week. And I also want to give a sort of summary, wrap-up, roundup of all the information that I have. And I do have notes here, and you can see I got full page plus of notes that are ultimately going to get turned into a blog post once I have the time to write it up. But I wanted to sort of capture my thoughts, and I've been doing this as I've been going through all the filters and sort of summarizing things, and I wanted to keep this, I'm not going to read this to you, but I wanted to keep it in front of me as I talked through. the sort of summary of this experience. So first off, let's deal with the Meerschaum filter, because that I'm going to keep that short and sweet. It was the same as the Peterson filter and the same as the Dr. Pearl filter after I wrapped it to fit it properly in the pipe. No difference. Draw was restricted, pipe was smokable, the flavor was basically cut in half. So, all in all, I can say that, you know, when I look at the four things that I tried, there were the three filters and the balsa insert, and I'm going to lump them together and call them all filters, even though I know the balsa insert is not technically a filter. But of the four filters that I tried, none of them are things that I'm going to use in the future. They just didn't provide any real benefit for me, and they didn't provide any benefit, and they had negatives to them in all cases. The three filters were negative because of the restricted draw and the reduction in flavor. The balsa insert actually did not restrict the draw too much. I mean, there was a slight difference, but it was livable. I could have dealt with that, but it had this sort of off raw wood taste that I didn't like, and therefore I would try to not use one of those in the future if I could avoid it. Now, will I someday come across the blend and say, filter? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And it's just at this moment in time, they're not for me. And I really can't foresee when they would be, but I like to keep an open mind. So, what did I learn in all of this? And there's really 3 points that I wrote down here that I want to talk about in terms of what I personally learned from this experience. And I want to stress that this has been, even though I've decided I don't want to use filters, this has been a really great experience. I've really enjoyed it. So, first, and I think most importantly, is that you have to compare apples to apples when you're doing this sort of thing. And this is more about if you wanted to try different filters and see which one you like. You want to make sure that you're comparing them on equal ground. So first off, if you want to compare filter to not filter, it's really important that you use an adapter, or you compare it between a filtered pipe and a non-filtered pipe, because that filter chamber is going to create turbulence and gurgling and all that kind of stuff. So that's one aspect of comparing apples to apples. If you're comparing filtered to unfiltered, make sure the airways are equivalent. The second thing that I think is important, and I've already mentioned, is that there is a difference between the balsa insert and the filters. And the balsa insert's not a filter, kind of. It is causing turbulence in the airstream, moisture's coming out, that's getting absorbed. With the moisture's coming stuff, so it is collecting some of the stuff that's in the airstream, or smoke stream rather, and preventing it from getting to your mouth. So in a sense, it's doing some degree of filtering, but nothing like what a actual filter would be doing. But it does allow for a much, much better draw. And lastly, and I made this point to death and made a whole video on it earlier in the week, that addendum video, the filter has to fit the pipe. And this is really important, because if the filter doesn't fit the pipe, you're not making a valid comparison between the two filters. One is acting as a filter, the other is acting more like a balsa insert. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Already mentioned, number 2 is that there's really not much difference in the filters. I've been through that, so I'm not gonna go through that all again. And the third thing, and I think this is actually really interesting, and at least one person mentioned this in the comments, maybe a couple of others. All of these things, the balsa inserts, the 3 filters that I looked at, stingers, and to some extent a poorly designed airway, all do the same thing. And that is, they create this turbulence in the smoke stream that causes condensation to be spun out of the smoke. It brings down with it particulate matter, and in the case of a gurgling pipe, it sits in the pipe and gurgles. In the case of a balsa insert, it gets absorbed by the balsa. In the case of a filter, it's got this very large surface area matrix inside of it, whether that's made of activated charcoal or meerschaum, and that's going to absorb it. So they all, and a stinger is probably doing a similar thing and just creating a gurgling pipe, at least in my experience. That's what happens with stingers. So in all cases, what's happening is you're taking a portion of the smoke stream away and absorbing it in some way, except for the stinger and the gurgling pipe, of course. And I thought that was interesting. So really, while you can't say all filters are created equal, in a sense, all filters can only do that thing. So really, while they may not be created equal, they also can only perform the task that a filter can perform. So that's what I learned, and I hope that's been useful information for you all. And one of the great things about this is that the comment sections have been very active and exciting, and I've enjoyed that. A couple people were concerned, said, oh, Christian Bonapiper, who started this whole thing off by giving me the pipe and the filters, he apologized for, as he put it, creating turmoil. I didn't see it as turmoil at all. I saw it as a great exchange of ideas. And I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. And if we disagree, that's okay. Okay, so now I want to go through a number of what I'm going to be calling filters, myths, or facts. And I'll give you my impression, and this is only my opinion. I'm not saying that this is the absolute truth, but what this experience has helped me decide upon for myself in terms of these various statements about filters. And the first one is filters produce a cooler and drier smoke. And without question, I can say that this is a fact. Did I notice it? No. To me, I can't say, oh boy, that was not a cool dry smoke before, because I pretty much always have a cool dry smoke. I don't have that problem. But people do, and the filters will probably be very helpful. All 4 of the products that I tested accumulated moisture. They did it in different ways, but they all accumulated moisture. And since water vapor is a major component of smoke, and it's the thing in the smoke that is most likely to be carrying heat to your mouth, absorbing that water vapor will very likely both cool the smoke and will certainly dry it. So this is true. Filters or the balsa insert and probably stingers will provide a cooler and drier smoke. Number 2, some filters will allow a full flavored smoke. This, I'm sorry to say, is, in my opinion, a myth. And this is what I was going on about with the fitting of the filter to the pipe. If the filter fits properly, you will not have a full flavored smoke compared to a non-filtered pipe. Now, if you like the filtered smoke, great. You're doing fantastic. Just enjoy it. Don't worry about this. But if you're a guy like me that's used to smoking all these tobaccos without a filter, you're not going to be able to put a filter in and still get the same flavor. It's just not possible because the filter is removing something from the smoke stream. Now, on this issue of the filter fitting, this is where things sort of become a bit contentious, but fortunately, I did that whole video on the Dr. Pearl filter not fitting, and I sealed off the end and everything. And I got some comments on that from Grandpa Cavendish and from Bremen Pipe Smoker, which were extremely helpful, and I really appreciate them. And they gave me information that I wish I had when I started out. And that is that the Dr. Pearl filters are actually designed by Vaughan to be used in the phone pipes, which have something that they call the Connex system. So the Connex system is, in the stem, in the pipe that I was using, the Savinelli, there's basically a cylindrical 9mm channel cut into the stem for the filter to slide into. And the Peterson filter and the Meerschaum filter fit that very tightly, so no air could get around the outside of it. The Dr. Pearl didn't. Now in the Vaughan stems, it's a 9mm bore that then narrows into a sort of a cone, and I believe, if I understood things properly, it narrows down to about 8mm. And that's over a relatively short distance at the button side of the filter chamber. What that does is that Dr. Pearl filter is deliberately undersized so that it can slide in easily and get into that conical section, and you jam it in there, and that will provide a seal around the outside of the filter. So it's absolutely perfect. It's designed to seal into the stem the same way that I was sealing it by wrapping paper around it. I didn't know about this, and I'm really glad that I do now know about this, because it clears up some of the problems that I was having. So if you use a Dr. Pearl filter in a Conex pipe, you're going to have less flavor in your smoke. It might be exactly the flavor you want, and that's great, but if you're smoking a non-filtered pipe, you're going to notice the difference. And the other filters will fit the standard 9mm bore and do the same thing. The one thing I will say is that the balsa insert did provide most of the flavor that I would expect. There was a slight diminishing of flavor with that, but it was very slight. But it did have this sort of off raw wood taste that I didn't like. So balsa inserts are different in this particular regard. But by and large, the filters are not going to allow you to get the full flavor that you would get without a filter. Number 3, filters do not decrease the draw. This has got to be a myth. I mean, it's physically impossible to put something in the airstream and not decrease the draw. If you use the Dr. Pearl filter in a non-Conex pipe and you don't wrap paper around it like I showed you, you'll get a good draw, but that's not filtering. It is absorbing moisture, just like the balsa insert is absorbing moisture. So maybe that's okay if that's what you're after. But if you think you're getting some reduction in tar and nicotine, as people like to say, that's not going to happen. Now the next one is probably going to get me in trouble. And it's the next to the last one, I promise. The next one is that filters provide a healthy alternative in pipe smoking. And I am going to call that a half-truth. And the reason is, if the filter fits properly, the folks that are proponents generally fall into 2 camps. There's the folks that just say it's less harsh, cooler, and drier. And that makes sense. The filter's absorbing the moisture. It's probably taking out some of the sharper, well, it's taking everything out, but that means you get less of whatever you're finding sharp. So yeah, it does do that. But then there are folks that say, well, it filters out tar and nicotine. And yes, it does, but it's filtering out everything. It's not selectively removing the bad things and only letting the good things come through. So from that perspective, if you think you need to use a filtered pipe for health benefit, and that would be a fine thing to do, but you don't like the diminished flavor that you get from the tobacco, you could just as reasonably smoke half as much tobacco and get the same health benefit that you would get from the filter, because all the filter's doing is removing half of the smoke. And by the way, I'm saying half as if it's been measured, but that's a guess. I don't know how much of it is missing, but certainly enough to notice. All right, finally, and this is the last myth or fact. Filter users are enlightened pipe smokers, or those that eschew filters are the only proper pipe smokers. Both of these statements are not only myths, but they're silly myths, and you should all know that. The only rule in pipe smoking is that you enjoy what you smoke and you smoke what you enjoy. And the only way to be wrong in pipe smoking is to try to tell somebody that they're doing something wrong. And I hope you all understood, and I think I beat it to death in that last video. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm just trying to share the experiences that I've had and the conclusions that I've come to. I have many friends out there that are filter pipe smokers, and I appreciate your friendship, and I want you to just keep on doing what you enjoy doing. And I'll keep on doing what I enjoy doing. And who knows, maybe from time to time we'll switch over and we might learn something. So with that, I am never going to talk about filters again. I am going to avoid using the F word with all of my my might, and we can put this to to rest now. I really thank you all for watching this series. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's, like I said, it's been an enormous amount of fun for me. Christian, thank you again for the pipe, for the filters, for the support, for the encouragement. I really appreciate it. And just so you all know, Christian continues to encourage me. He still thinks that there's value out there that I just haven't found, and maybe he's right. We'll just have to see how things go down the road. So thank you again, Christian. And thank you all for the comments that you've provided, both the folks that have agreed with me and the folks that have disagreed. They've helped me refine my thinking. They've helped make these videos better, and I greatly appreciate that from each and every one of you. So with that, I've run a bit long here. I wanted to get through all those points and never speak of it again. So I hope you all have a great week ahead. Enjoy yourselves. Watch some football today. Go Eagles. And until we speak again, I will look forward to talking to you all again very soon. Goodbye now.